Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Transforming with V. I'm super excited about tonight's episode. I hope you all are too. But before we get into the show, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, the V Bailey Network, or at V Bailey Network on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, as well as our friends at the HBCU Lounge Network. I'm sure they will appreciate it as well. There's a lot of good content on both channels. So make sure you subscribe and share, because this evening's episode is going to be, I think, very beneficial. This evening is episode 6, and it is transforming what you attract. So be ready, y'all. Be ready. Get your notes, get your pen and paper, take notes. And of course, if you have questions, you can, throw them in the chat throughout the show, and I'll, bring that up a little bit later as well. So we can, wait for some folks to kind of get in here. I'm sure that they may have questions at whatever, time that you pop in. Without further ado, our guest that we have this evening is no stranger to the show. She is family. She is family to the show for sure. She's been on throughout the years of the content that I've shared. She's been with us, giving us those jewels that she always does, great bullet points, practical things that you can use and apply to the topic that you are covering, but also your everyday life. And so I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Dyona back with us this evening. Welcome.
Thank you so much, V. It's always a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me on. And honestly, I'm excited to talk about this topic because I think it's something a lot of people can relate to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Me too. Because just the different things. I feel like so many things are just kind of like shoved down our throats about what we should be doing, where we should be at in life, relationship wise, career wise. And I really wanted to have the conversation because I see a lot of us, we have gifts, we have different things going on where we're really successful in so many areas of our lives, but then we kind of like make these crazy decisions, and it's just like, what is going on, and they were like, well, I don't know, like, I just feel like I'm attracting, that's what I attract, and like, you're just accepting it and giving up. And I think that some of us are like, okay, I want to change it, but then like not necessarily making the changes, or sometimes we just don't know like what to do. But before, I get to the questions, for those, those audience members that haven't seen you before, if you could just introduce yourself and just tell like what you do, like a little bit about you and the work that you do, just so they kind of got a little quick, who you are. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Dyona. Some people call me Dr. D. Dyona, doesn't really matter. I'm actually a licensed psychologist working in South Florida. I have a private practice with my sister called Augustin and Augustin Psychology. And then we also have a portion of time that we dedicate to the Mental Health Sisters, which is basically just an organization that's all about mental health, especially in communities of color and among minority women. So basically, I do a lot of therapy with people in my community, workshops, presentations, and so on and so forth, and just do whatever I can to teach people more about mental health and do whatever I can to make sure people get access to culturally competent services and care. So it is a pleasure to be here tonight.
Awesome. We definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. I say you're always busy doing the Lord. And I love that. You definitely have a heart, for service. And I know that, like just the work that you do could take a lot out of you. And I'm just grateful and always praying for you because, you're constantly giving back. And so, of course, the people who are out here doing things for us, we need to pray for them. And,
Amen.
Pour into them in the way that you know how to, in a positive way, because they needed to. So
No,
thank
that's very true. Even the people who are giving need the prayer and the
oh
emotional
yes.
support. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. And of course, same here. I'm always praying for you and other people in my circles that God will provide exactly what you need.
Oh yes. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, let's get into it. So all right. So we are familiar with the term, you attract what you are, right? And
Yeah.
so what do you think about that? Do you agree?
Okay, so I'm the kind of person I feel like sometimes there are certain things we say that are very catchy. So
Mm,
multiple people hear it and then they just pass it on as if it's gospel. I
mhm,
actually, when I hear people say you attract what you are, I actually feel like it's yes and no.
okay.
And what I mean by that is there are some cases where you attract people based on where you are at life, what your emotional, psychological, spiritual maturity is. You know, if you're the type of person who has, for example, daddy wounds or mommy wounds, then
Mm,
yes, you may attract someone that seemingly will fill that void or that need or that lack that you have. Or
mm,
maybe you're a person who has a lot of codependent traits where you're always caregiving and always putting other people's needs before your own. Then, yes, you definitely may attract narcissistic types. But at the end of the day, I also disagree with the saying that you attract what you are, because there are some people who are going to be attracted to you just by proxy of what you bring to the table. So,
mm,
for example, you can be someone who has a firm head on your shoulders. You can be someone who has gone to therapy. You have done the work. You have addressed the mommy issues, the daddy issues, the childhood traumas, the assaults, and all of these other things. And
mm,
even though you're in a good place, you're still attracting people that it kind of wouldn't necessarily make sense. But I see it more so like, you know, how when you have a light outside of your house, and there are moths and fireflies and bugs that are attracted to it.
mm,
Sometimes because you are a light, you're going to attract all kinds of people. So to
mm,
me, it's less so who are you attracting and more so who you keep around you. So you
mm,
can attract all kinds of people, but
right.
who are you allowing in your circle?
Now that's so important in knowing the difference, as well, because there will be different times in your life where let's just say, like you are on your growth journey, and there's certain things that slip through the cracks, like you may just be on point, but then there's certain things or certain areas of your life where you still struggle. And so
Mhm.
those different, people, different relationships, just different things will slip through the cracks. And you find yourself, like you said, depending on where you are in life, um, you find yourself kind of trauma bonding with these people, and or being, and then taking it on, like like you're a victim in the situation. It's like, no, this is the area obviously that you're struggling in, and we get to kind of like make be, I guess, aware of it, so that we don't allow those people to stay in our lives. Or, you know
But
what
I
I mean? Like,
actually
make
think
space.
that's part of the problem sometimes is we don't even recognize, for example, that we're in a trauma bond, because
Mm,
sometimes dysfunction becomes normal for you the longer you're in it. So
mm,
if, for example, you were raised in a family or an environment where all you saw was toxic or dysfunctional relationships, that
mhm.
becomes your blueprint of what is normal. So
Right.
if you witness your parents, for example, keeping people in their lives who were unhealthy, negative, toxic, or dysfunctional, you start to learn part of loving and caring for people is keeping them around me, even if they hurt me. So sometimes there has to be something that changes or shifts in your brain or your mentality so that you recognize, oh, wait, this actually is not normal. You know,
Right.
this may be something I'm used to, but it's not necessarily something that's healthy.
And that's such a good point, because you're right. I don't think a lot of people know that. I think that, and it's probably more than we think, where we struggle in that area of thinking like, okay, that's love. Because honestly, they have a book, Love Languages, and it obviously goes deeper than the five.
Mhm.
but um, but yeah, there's certain things that we interpret as love because that is something that we seen or how we grew up, and it was just
Yep.
so normal. So it may not even feel good, but because that's what you know, that's what you accept. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I think that that is something to kind, try and figure out and find out. Okay, what does that look like? What's a normal, healthy, relationship for those, or what are
Mhm.
healthy interactions? Because yes, if you grew up in a toxic home, you you won't know until someone, obviously we don't know anything until someone teaches us, or you
Definitely
start to
not.
recognize and listen to your body. Your body's like, I don't know what it is. Something don't feel right
Mhm.
though.
I think you just made a really good point, V, but I don't think enough people listen to their bodies.
Oh yeah.
I think sometimes we have an idea in our head of what we want and what we're looking for. And even when we experience symptoms in our body, it doesn't register that
Mm,
even though we might think that this person is good for us, our gut is telling us, mm-mm, this ain't
mm,
it. But I think a lot of us, we just have learned to minimize and invalidate our feelings, and we do the same thing with our bodies.
mm. Yeah. That's so true. I'm starting to, well, probably the last couple of years, starting to learn how to listen to my body. And I'm like, okay, when I'm like, I had a terrible, like I felt terrible. I'm like, okay, what did I do before that, leading up to it? Because I felt like this before, but where did it
Mhm.
come from? And so I started to try and track like what was going on. And because,
Mhm.
I do my little fitness pal. I can track at least I can track what I ate. And then I can track like, okay, what was I doing? Did I stay
Mhm.
up till 3 a.m.? Did I, work out? Did I take my vitamins? All those things that I kind of go through those lists. And usually about 99.9% of the
Mhm.
I didn't do all those things that I know that now, like I know that
Mhm.
affect me. And so I'm just like, okay, it's this
Yeah.
long, like the day's almost over. You haven't taken any vitamins, just take them anyway. Just get them in your body.
Yeah.
Try and go to bed. That's the part that I struggle with is going to sleep at a reasonable hour. But I've been that
Oh,
way since I was a kid.
no.
I'm just like, I gotta figure it out at least, one more hour. Maybe I
Yeah.
can't fully
Sleep
commit to
is
8
important for
hours.
sure.
Well, maybe 7. Because I'd be like
Mhm.
5 or 6, and I know that's terrible.
Yeah.
So, well, so next I wanted to ask, because I know we're talking about like, do we attract what we are? But what about when it comes to energy? Because like, I know, you were discussing, it was just like, okay, well, no, like,
Mhm.
right, like when you are an attractive person, or
Mhm.
even you have good energy,
Mhm.
well, we're getting ready to talk about that, but like even when you're like a nice person, people are
Mhm.
attracted to you because for many reasons, like you look good, you
Mhm.
look good. So they like
Mhm.
looking at you and they're attracted. And so whatever they, want to do with that, that's them, but they are attracted to you.
Yeah.
Then there is you being a kind person or just a good time. And so they want to be
Mhm.
around you, but it's not necessarily that they wanted to be around you for good reasons, for it to be a mutual, beneficial type of relationship, whether that's friendship, business, or
Mhm.
intimate, or even family, right? So, what would you say about that when it comes to the energy? Because sometimes they say opposites attract, but then like when it comes
Mhm.
to the energy, it's like the same energy attracts a lot of times, where it's like good folks, like they attract good and other
Mhm.
stuff. But people with that negative energy, it's like the negative energy in me is attracted to the negative energy in you, or whatever. You find yourself, the
Mhm.
person who always talks negative, they always end up in a negative situation. And I always say that's manifesting, but you just manifest that situation. But what what are your
Mhm.
thoughts on it?
So when it comes to energy, I actually think there are different things that can happen. I'm definitely a person who I can tell when the energy is off, and I won't
Mm.
necessarily say anything right then and there. But like maybe when I'm with my sister, I'll be like, "Was I the only one who felt like this?" Just to kind of check in and see what she thought.
Right.
But I also think one of the things we struggle to do is perceiving the different energies out there.
Mm.
Something can seem sweet or good at first, but
Mhm.
underneath it, there's something negative. So,
Right.
for example, I'm a huge like true crime fiction type of
Mhm.
person. And I can't tell you how many times I've watched like a documentary where someone was poisoned. And the
Mm.
thing that the poison was placed in, whether it was cereal, whether it was juice or whatever, when they ate it, it tasted sweet, but
Mm.
not a natural sweet. It was like an excess sweetness and it
Ah.
had poison in it. And I think sometimes too, that's how it is with the people we interact with.
Mm.
Some people, the energy is just light, good, clean, but there are other people who at first they may appear to present a certain way, but over time, especially as you watch their actions, you start to recognize this energy isn't what I thought it was, and this person isn't truly for me. And that's when you have to kind of take steps to pull back and set a boundary and kind of find your community or your people.
Oh, wow. That's so true. And it's just terrible when you have, because like to me, I feel like I can kind of pick it up and I'm like, mm-mm. My friend used to be like, how do you do that so quickly? I said, listen, I don't know. I guess I live in the fields. So I'm always like,
Senses.
that didn't seem, it didn't feel good in the interaction. You're just like, okay.
Mhm.
So normally I can kind of pick when they're just not genuine, but every once in a while, there are some of those folks that really they could play. Like you
Mhm.
can, I won't say long term, but in the beginning, you're just like, okay, they're cool, and they really don't be cool. You okay. I guess not.
Mhm.
But so some people, I think they're a little better at faking it a little longer. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
sometimes,
sure.
you know, well, it wouldn't be appealing if it was wrapped. I mean, if it was just was it what it was, if you could see what it was,
Mhm.
right? So they got to clean themselves up, act a
Oh,
certain way.
yeah, a lot of people, they're wearing masks,
Oh, yeah.
and if you don't learn to see behind the mask, you're going to be surrounded by a bunch of actors,
Oh,
essentially.
yeah. That's so true. And it's so sad, but it's like, because, when you're like all positive and you're like wanting to see the best in people, and you're just like, that ain't right.
No.
Like I gotta back on up, and remove
Yeah.
myself. And I think that there is a way for you to distance yourself. That's but that's a struggle for some people, is to distance themselves once they've kind of created a relationship. They feel like, okay, well, I don't want to, come off this way or be rude, but at the end of the day, you do have to protect your energy for real, not just say it, but protect your energy. Um, because you get tired of it. I know I have. Before I would just go with
Sure.
it, be like, oh, I'm just gonna, be around and pour into them. But eventually that becomes very exhausting. And
Mhm.
and it's like that ain't your ministry, boo.
Yeah.
Like the ones you
I
who are called to pour into, you'll know.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that, and I think a lot of times people talk about, "I don't wanna be rude, I don't wanna be mean," but I think sometimes people conflate being assertive with
Mm,
being aggressive. So
mhm,
there's a
they do.
difference between you talking to people in a condescending, patronizing way,
Mm,
making them feel like they're beneath you, inferior, or whatever, versus you recognizing, huh, this person, I thought they were my friend. I thought they were for me. But now I'm recognizing that they're not really my friend, or,
right.
they're not really there for me. They don't celebrate my wins.
Mhm.
They don't revel in seeing me move forward and succeed, and setting a boundary in an assertive way, which
Mm,
is recognizing you deserve to be surrounded by people who truly, genuinely love, care, and support you. And so do I. So
right.
if I'm not
We
a
both
person who's
deserve it.
going to be a part of my tribe, then it is okay for us to say, you know what, this friendship was for a season, because sometimes friendships are for a season. And that doesn't mean that the two of you guys have to be like cats and dogs enemies. It can
Right.
literally just mean there's been a change in the relationship and friendship. So we have to stop conflating being assertive with being aggressive. And then also remember, you're not responsible for other people's feelings. Everyone is responsible for their own feelings. They have
Mm.
to work that out just like you have to work yours out.
That is so true. That is so true. It's just like stop taking on everything and putting everything on your plate. But that's the lesson that some of us has to have to learn in our own
Mhm.
time. But I have learned that. So you got to keep working on it though, too, for sure. Um,
Mhm.
so I wanted to refer to a post that you had. I meant to go and actually take down some more notes, but you know what I'm talking about. But
Mhm.
a post that you
Yeah.
had shared on your page where you were talking about relationships and
Mhm.
mentioned um, when we know better, but we choose someone who is not choosing us back, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm not for sure if you kind of went into the fact of like, basically their sureness of you, because that's kind of how I'm taking it too, is like the sureness of you. But you talk to this,
Mhm.
you continue to talk to this person who is not choosing you, and whether that's your relationships, like romantic or even friendships, because a lot of us run around here. I mean, I believe you were on the episode. Yes, because I can hear
Mhm.
your voice of frenemies.
Yeah.
and and so even with those, like those friendships, there's tons of people, even our parents' age, that are keeping people around, even at that big old age, that are
Yep.
frenemies, you know?
Yep.
And or dating wise, you're in a relationship with someone and you're like, okay, I want to be married, I'm
Mhm.
saying I'm intentional, but I'm with
Mhm.
someone when we talk about that or have that conversation, they're just like, I'm not for sure. I mean, I could get married. I don't know. Right now,
Mhm.
I just don't know. I'm just kind of going with the flow. That, as a person, as you, whichever it
Mhm.
is, the male or the man or the
Mhm.
woman,
Mhm.
if you're saying that you're intentional, but you're with someone who is like all over the place
Mhm.
and is not sure and is not, they're like maybe,
Mhm.
depends on the person. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, um, take them out of it. What's going on with you? Because you're supposed to be sure and
Mhm.
intentional, but this person over here is just like, I'm just chilling. We cooling it. No, what's going on? So, what's going on there? Why is that happening?
I think that one of the things that we don't recognize sometimes is in our adult relationships, we are replaying or playing out what happened to us in childhood. So
Mm,
let's say you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable or
mm,
who showed you love and affection inconsistently. So then you learn this is what love looks like.
mm,
Love isn't consistent. Love is sometimes there and sometimes not. Love can be rejecting. Love can mean abandonment. Love can mean making you promises and not keeping them.
mm,
Love can mean constantly not being sure where you stand. So if you were raised in a family where either it was a single parent, maybe your dad wasn't there, maybe your mom wasn't there, or maybe you were raised by a single parent, and your other parent popped in and out whenever they chose. Or maybe you had both parents in the house, but one or both parents was emotionally absent. You
mm,
have no security in that relationship. So, what you learn is love looks like fill in the blank with whatever you saw growing up. So, if there was inconsistency, if you grew up not really being sure that your parents loved you because they never said it or they were inconsistent in their actions, you may find yourself in an adult relationship with someone who has not made their intentions clear, with
mm,
someone who is inconsistent, with someone who makes promises and doesn't keep them.
mm,
Because your inner child is constantly trying to fix and heal wounds from the
mm.
past. So
Wow.
there's almost this sense of maybe I can get him or her to choose me in the way that mom and dad did not. But in
Mm,
the process of you seeking to heal that inner child wound, you will not actually attract or stay in a relationship with someone who is healthy
right.
because you are not used to what healthy looks like. So
Right.
when you meet someone who's healthy, you may think they're boring. You may think that it's not the same thing because it's not as chaotic and dramatic. So for a lot of us, we're replaying things from the past in adulthood.
Mm. Oh, so sad. And the truth is that at the end of it all, it doesn't feel it because it can't, you know, it can. I've
Mhm.
seen it. I've seen it in myself. I've seen it in friends, and you're just looking for something, and then when you finally get that, it's like, okay, this is nice. This is nice, but you realize like, oh, it didn't resolve that. Like I gotta actually
No.
go to the root of this situation and have, those kind of conversations. And I think that I'm glad for me that I've learned how to do that because I think some stuff you don't want to like go to your parents about different things and like say because you
Mm.
don't know are they going to be upset about it or they're going to be offended, you know
Mhm.
and I know that some people's issues are deeper than others, but a lot of times it's just little stuff where you just kind of not surface level, but it became deeper because it's been set aside or just kind of pushed, to the back burner for a long time. And so it is preventing you from being more, I don't know, well, from your healing, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just being scary. My mama, she raised us a little scary, just a little bit because she was trying to protect her kids and she has all girls
Yes.
and one boy. So there was some stuff that we didn't get to do, some stuff we're just really scared. I am probably was the scariest one out of all
Yes.
my like, no, because mom said this, and all I can hear is her in the back, the
Mhm.
back of my mind. What is it? The majority of people don't want to do the work and expect their issues to magically disappear. Absolutely. Yeah, you have to be
Mhm.
committed to it. Like that's the only reason because even in like the healing process for me, I mean, it's an
Mhm.
ongoing thing. It's like lifelong, but because there's just different, obviously, we're living in this world and people are still going to hurt us or disappoint us
Of
or,
course.
and then some of that is a lot of that's going to be you and what you choose for yourself, what you allow to
Mhm.
be harmful to you or to be a lesson, and so, but yeah, the work is hard, but in order to have something different, you have to do the work. It's kind of like if you want love, you have to
Mhm.
chance being hurt because you got to actually be out there, and and some
But that's
people
the thing,
may not do
doing the
right.
work.
Yeah, they
Nobody
don't. I mean, it
wants
hurts.
to work nowadays.
Yeah.
People say they wanna commit, but then they wanna pull out when things get hard, so
Right.
it's just we're in a generation now where people want the results
Oh, they want
quick,
the results and no work.
but they don't wanna have to work for it or work at it for a long time to get those results.
Right. Nope. So true. It's so true. Let me see here. So, in your personal, your professional, and your personal, because we want to hear it all. Why do you think that? No, we already kind of like we talked about that about choosing first, but what about the friendships and that arena? I
Mhm.
know you're saying okay, a lot of that's coming from our childhood. So are you saying like in some cases, I've noticed, people looking for like a mother sometimes even in their friendship
Mhm.
or like
Mhm.
sisters because they either didn't have them or they just didn't have good relationships with them.
Mhm.
So is that are you saying that it's the same, the same way as like what you're doing for it like in your relationships, in your romantic relation, you're doing that same thing with the friends?
So basically, our blueprint for how we show up in relationships, whether it's
Mhm.
platonic or romantic, is based on what we learned in our family of origin. So
Okay.
let's say we go with the classic nuclear family, mom, dad, sister, brother. Okay.
Uh-huh.
If I grow up in that family, I learn how to interact with men based on my interactions, mostly with my dad, to a
Mhm.
lesser extent, my brother. And
Uh,
then I learn how to deal with women, mostly based on what I saw in my relationship with my mom,
mhm.
and then to a lesser extent, my sister.
Mhm.
So if I don't have a good relationship with my mom, chances are I will not have a good relationship with women.
Oh yeah, I've
So
seen
you know
that.
how sometimes there are women who say, "Oh yeah, no, I
I
tend to be
don't
one of the
females.
guys. I don't get along with women. I don't have girlfriends." Generally speaking, when I hear that, I already know you also don't have a good relationship with your mom. So,
Mhm.
in your adult friendships and relationships, a lot of times we are replaying skits from the past and
Mm,
we don't even know we're doing that. And the reason we're doing that is because the inner child is always trying to fix things from the past.
mm.
But what we sometimes fail to recognize is you can't go back in time. You know, you can't change the way that parent related to you or the way they treated you. So you have to, for example, speak to a therapist, unpack the trauma,
Mhm,
neglect, or anything else you experienced in your childhood. Learn to grieve, you know, the parent you should have had, the
mm.
father-daughter relationship, the mother-daughter relationship, the
Right,
father-son, the mother-son relationship you should have had.
right.
Reparent yourself so that you stop looking for other people to validate and meet those needs. Because when you're constantly waiting for other people to validate and meet those needs, you will accept anything. It's
Mhm.
like a person who's thirsty, you know, and they're super thirsty and they live in Florida and it's 100+ degrees outside, you know, and you come up to them with a cup and it's full of Windex, but it's a liquid. It looks like it's going to quench their thirst, so they drink it. That's how a lot of us are in relationships. We're so thirsty. We haven't done the work of actually addressing things from our past. So we will accept anything in the hopes of healing that part of us or quenching that need or void or whatever it is.
No, it's so true. Kind of what I don't know if there was a question. Um,
Mhm.
for everybody who's out there, if you guys do have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We appreciate, if you got any of your feedback, or just if you guys are curious about something or have any, just whatever, any questions relating to the topic. It looks like Dr. Joe. Oh, she said spinning unhealthy and untrue narratives. Yeah.
That's my sister, by the way. Shout
Okay,
out
I
to
was
Dr.
wondering. I was like,
Joe.
hey, sis. We got another doctor in here.
Mhm.
And Black Marvel said the majority. Oh, we talked about that, but forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past can be any different, and
Mm.
that's true. That's we. Sometimes you're not going to get exactly what you want, and you have to go through
Yes.
it. Just like you were saying, seeking a therapist, because a lot of times, when you have these issues, family issues, they're the hardest ones.
Mhm.
Let me tell you,
Yes.
you can conquer the world.
Yes.
But when it comes to family, because it's different, they're a part of you.
Mhm.
And so, and you have a different expectation for them. And I think too,
Yes.
a lot of times people are seeking something out there in the world
Mhm.
that they really want it from their family, but because they don't get that, they shut down and don't.
Mhm.
They're like, no one cares, no one does this, no one does that. And it's just
Mhm.
like, well, no, there's plenty of people um,
Mhm.
that are willing to step into that, place for you, stand in the gap. And that's something too, I had to learn, I seen it.
Mhm.
Like, am I doing it, in any way? Like if there's people who want to be in your life and provide you with something that you feel that you're missing, a lot of times
Mhm.
God provides it in different people.
That's true. I
Yeah,
definitely think God provides it in different people, but just going back to what the Black Marvel said, forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past can be any different. I
right.
think some of us are stuck in the past and don't recognize it. So,
Exactly.
for example, you talked about how God sometimes is trying to meet a void and is using other people to do it for us. But
Mhm.
let's say you come from a family that was very invalidating, where they did not meet your needs, where you told them what you wanted and they did nothing for you. The
Right.
message that you take into adulthood is if my own blood relatives wouldn't do this, I can't expect someone on the outside to do it. So
Right.
you keep your expectations and standards super low because you figure in the blueprint, these people who are my blood relatives, they weren't there. They didn't show up. They didn't care if I told them something bothered me. So now you get into a relationship where you accept the same kind of treatment, because how can you expect any different from, a random person when your own blood relatives didn't try?
Yeah, that's true. And I think too, it depends on what they mean to you and your family, right? Because some people are like closer, to a sibling, cousin, a aunt,
Yeah.
either parent. And I think that that's something too that you have to be able to separate. Like you can't put all that pressure, like even on one, family member, because,
Hmm.
they got their stuff, too. And I think it's just that the communication as well, different ways to communicate. Like I'm a mama's girl, so I just be talking to my mom about everything. But if she doesn't say something that that I would like her to say, I'd be kind of mad. I used to be kind of mad, but I have been working on it because it's like, well, she still is her own person too. Yes, she's my mama, but
Exactly.
not,
And,
agree. So some other people, I'll be like, oh, I don't care what you said, but mom,
mhm.
it's gonna affect me different because I'm just like, I want you to feel the same way as I do, with
And
it.
that's
But
something that we all have to grow out of. Like, we
right,
have to recognize the people around us, they are not us and they are not an extension of us. They're
mhm,
their own person, so they can have their own opinion. And
right,
part of being in a healthy relationship is being accepted for who you are. So you
right.
don't have to fit into this cookie cutter mold to be accepted and loved.
Yeah, because that's exhausting for those people too,
Yeah.
and yeah, so we don't want to wear wear our family members out.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see. All right. So this whole season I've been
Mhm.
talking about transforming transforming in different
Mhm.
areas of your life that you would like to make a permanent change. And I love
Mhm.
this season. I really feel like it could go longer, but like really just talking about some of the things that we talked about because so many people want to transform these different areas of their life. Um, but with this one, I really, well, I guess all of them, it's really been about
Mhm.
mindset and
Mhm.
just transforming, your mindset. Um, when it comes to just everything that you mentioned so far.
Mhm.
Um, because if your mindset, you keep the same mindset, it's impossible for you to shift, right?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about that. If you could, shed a little bit more light about how much of this is your mindset and how your mindset impacts how and what you attract.
So when it comes to mindset and mentality, one of the things I think I did this in my blog, I
Mm,
compared it to the operating system on a computer. You know
mhm,
how, like, for example, if you have a PC or a MacBook, every once in a while they'll tell you there's a software update, and this update affects these bugs and these glitches and this and that. Some of us have maintained the same initial operating software and we refuse to update. And
mm,
yet, when we cannot interact, when we cannot process and do what others are doing, we
mm.
view them as the problem versus recognizing. In order for you to grow, you have to be willing to change. And
Right.
in order for you to change, there's going to be some discomfort because it's
Mhm.
going to mean doing something you haven't necessarily always done. So sometimes when people talk to me about, oh, I wish life was like this, and I wish I could feel like this, and I wish I could be like this, I like to ask them, what's standing in the way of you being that way or getting to that place? And most people focus on everyone else and what they're doing, but they don't recognize all of the power is up here.
Mm,
If you don't learn to change the way you think, you're
mhm,
not going to be able to change the way you feel. And remember, thoughts impact feelings, which impact behavior. So when I
mm,
see someone stuck in the same negative or maladaptive behavior patterns, that tells me you still haven't changed your way of thinking. And
Right.
until you change the way of thinking, you're not going to change your feelings and your behaviors are also not going to change. So
Yeah.
I think if people truly and genuinely want to transform, first of all, they have to be honest with themselves.
Mm.
So, for example, earlier you talked about writing things down so that you can
Mhm.
pick up on patterns.
Mhm.
Start to write down things about yourself, you know? If
Mhm.
you notice that you tend to attract the same types of people, start to write down how you're making those choices. Where are you going to find these people? Who are
Mm.
you accepting and who are you rejecting? Try to
Mm.
figure out, okay, what is the pattern? And then say to yourself, what do I usually do? And what could I do instead? Because a lot of times we don't recognize this, but we just fall into the habit. Okay. So, for
Right.
example, when I'm coming home from work, I know which route I'm going to take. And generally, I take that same route. But if
Mm.
I don't like the outcome or the destination or the process to get there, I have to eventually say, okay, instead of turning on this street, I'm going to turn on that one. That's
Right.
what you have to do with your behavior. You don't like your relationship patterns? Write down the way you normally get into relationships and say, all right, what could I do differently? If you don't like the kinds of friends you attract or the kinds of friends you have in your circle, okay,
Mhm.
start to write down, how did I choose this person? Why
Mm.
have I allowed this person to stay this long? And then start to ask, what could I do differently? Or what other questions could I ask? You know, don't just expect the result or the outcome to be different because you just wish it would be different. No,
Mm.
you have to actually put in the work of asking yourself, what have I always done and what could I do instead? Where have I always gone and where can I go instead? What
Mm.
have I always accepted that I may need to deny and reject?
Right.
What have I had in my life where there were no boundaries that I may need to put a boundary?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's what I think is, when you transform your mindset, then you definitely that's a way that you'll be able to transform those behaviors.
Mhm.
And just stop attracting what you don't want. And but to attract what you want, I'm sure
Mhm.
like, coming from matchmakers and stuff like that. They'll tell you, I'm sure they'll tell you all these things. And it's cool. I
Mhm.
love matchmakers. I think they're great. They have
Mhm.
a hard job. I did a little matchmaking. But
Yeah.
but what is that key? Is there a key thing or a few key things to attract what you desire, or attract what you want more of in
Mhm.
your life?
For
Um,
sure. I definitely think one of the keys is to be what you're looking for.
mm,
I
good.
think this is an example that my sister shared with me that it just resonated with me. She said a lot of people are like water bottles that are maybe like a quarter full,
Mm,
and they're going out into the dating scene looking for someone to fill them up.
to fill them up.
So what usually happens is you have 2 almost empty bottles, and they get into a relationship hoping for the other person to pour in them and fill them up, and then they're both left lacking or wanting.
Right.
Versus if both of the bottles are full to the brim, when they pour into each other, they overflow. So
Mm,
when it comes to attracting what you want, stop just looking for this perfect person, whatever perfect is to you. Work
mhm.
on actually being that. If
Right.
it's important for you to have someone who is intelligent, articulate, educated, get educated. You know, doesn't mean you have to go to school. Read more books, you know,
Mhm.
shadow people, look for
Right.
mentorship. If you're
Right.
looking for someone who tends to be fit or healthy, all right, you start going to the gym, you start
Right.
spinning and cycling and doing all of those different things. If you're
Right.
looking for someone who's financially stable and secure, all right, what are you doing? Are you budgeting? Are you getting out of debt? Like, stop
Mhm.
waiting on Mr. Perfect or Mrs. Perfect to just walk into your life. Actually, say, how can I be the thing that I'm looking for?
Right.
Because when you work on being the thing that you're looking for, You're coming from a place of being filled as
Mm,
opposed to being empty. When
right.
you're empty, you'll accept anything. So again, it's not just about what you attract, it's about what you keep around you. But when you're full and you
Mm,
meet other people who are empty, you quickly recognize they're a drain and you're able to cut them off and set the
right.
boundary. But
Right.
when you're full and you meet someone else who is also full, then what ends up happening is the two of you together, you overflow. There's abundance, there's peace. There's not that constant insecurity and needing to be
Mm,
validated. There's just this recognition that both of us have done the work. As Dr. Miles Monroe would put it, he
mm.
always said, not enough people know what it means to be single. To be single is to be whole. So what
Mm,
ends up happening is we have a lot of people who are technically single in the sense that they're not in a relationship, but they're not whole. They're broken and they're looking for other people to fix and fill them. So
mm.
then they tend to attract. I said earlier, moths and bugs are attracted to light. Moths and bugs are also attracted to trash. You're not doing the work, both of you are going to be attracting the wrong types of people, and
Right.
you're going to get stuck and you're going to stay stuck. So in order to attract the what you're looking for, you got to do the work on yourself. If you need to go to therapy, go to therapy. If you're not sure you can afford therapy, you can actually Google affordable therapy, low cost, free therapy services. Where there's a will, there's a way. I think a lot of times, though, for a lot of people, there's just no will. They want the results, but they don't want to do the work.
Definitely. Oh, so someone texted me. They said, "Well, what about for those people who? What is she trying to say? Um, where they take on projects, right?
Mhm,
So what? I guess that's what she's saying, trying to say. Um,
mhm,
that take on projects, right? And so they take on they are prone to take on projects, and they don't
mhm.
really know why they do that because
Okay,
they're kind of like
so
they're getting something out of it. They
uh-huh.
feel like they're kind of just like, I guess, like there's nothing wrong with it because everybody has their issues. But
Mhm,
people tend, okay, that's what she's saying, is that people tend to say that, this person takes on
mhm.
projects. How can you identify if that's what you're doing?
Okay, so one of the things I sometimes see as a pattern is sometimes this again is related to childhood. So, for example, if you had a parent who was a caretaker, caregiver type, who was constantly coming to the rescue,
Mm,
constantly enabling or fixing things for other people, you may follow that pattern. Also, if you were raised in a family where you were the one who had to be the parent, either
mm,
because your parent was an alcoholic or a drug addict, or maybe your parent was narcissistic and they used you for their emotional support, you might also see this same kind of fixing thing going on. Another thing sometimes is it's an ego boost for you.
mm,
There's a reason why you are not looking for someone who is comparable or complementary or equal to you. You're
mm,
looking for a project because you get something out of that. There
mm.
is a need that is being met. And until you actually take the time to sit down and write, what was it that attracted me to this person? Because sometimes you don't know they're a project just by looking at them.
Mm,
But over time, you start to recognize, man, I'm putting a lot of time and energy into this person. Okay, what initially attracted you to this person? What was it about this person that made you feel like they would be a good fit for you? Now
right.
that you're in the relationship, what's going well and what's not going well? Okay, so for example, in houses, real estate, all right, sometimes we buy a house that is a foreclosure. It's not necessarily in the best condition, so we get
Mm,
a good price on it. Okay, that's one thing. But when it comes to people, what usually ends up happening is these people are a drain on you. They're a
mm,
drain on your time, they're a drain on your energy. And I'm not even going to lie to you, V, you're going to age faster because you're not in
that
a relationship. sometimes we call things relationship. We put that label on it. Oh, that's my boyfriend. That's my girlfriend. Nope, that's not what's going on at all. It's not a relationship. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even call it a situationship. It's a
Right.
drain. They are draining you. They are a vampire. They are sucking the blood out of you emotionally, spiritually. They're just it's like a person who only goes to an ATM to make withdrawals. Like some of us are in, again, I'm not going to call it a relationship. We're connected to someone who is only there to use us. We are an object to them.
Mm.
So if you notice you have that pattern where you're
Mhm.
constantly investing time, energy, money into people and they're not reciprocating, and you're constantly gluing them back together again, that's a sign that you have to go back and do the work to figure out what is it about me that is not only choosing these people, but staying with them long after I've recognized that this person is not a partner. Just
Mm.
because we call them boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife doesn't make them a partner.
So true. That's good. That was good. You're right on it. And the video that I had posted,
Mhm,
um, they were talking about, I guess, from a different angle that
mhm,
a lot of times people will do that where they're taking on dating a project. I don't think the
mhm,
person is dating a project all the way, but they'll take on the project because there is that area in them. They see themselves in that
mhm,
person, and instead
mhm,
of fixing that in themselves or going out there and starting that business or you
mhm,
know living in like following whatever it is that is your purpose, they see
mhm,
someone who is in the similar situation, and then they work with them on their dream,
mhm,
their purpose, or this whatever it is that they have, business that they want to start, and they're working with them instead of doing the same thing for themselves because they're too scared to do it. And that's
mhm,
what the video is talking about. So I'm wondering, obviously what you said is so good and so spot on.
mhm,
But I think that that's something to mention too. I posted it and I was just like, oh wow.
mhm.
I'm sure that that happens a lot more than we
I
even think in our own
definitely
life.
think.
Yeah.
No,
Because it's
I
easier. Like,
definitely
oh yeah,
think there's a possibility. Because yes, you just hit the nail on the head. It is easier, but I
you
also think
fail.
like one of the most common fears is a fear of failure.
Right.
But the other one that we don't talk about as much is the fear of success. Some
Mm,
of us want it, but deep down inside, we don't really think that we'll ever get it. And I can actually relate to that where sometimes I've had times where I'm talking to my sister about something and then
mm,
I'm kind of having the realization, I'm saying that I want this and I'm saying that I'm willing to do this. But, the more that I read and the more introspection, self reflection that I do, I'm like, there's also a part of me that feels like maybe this isn't going to happen. So
right.
I had to do the work to figure out where is that coming from?
Mm,
What negative message have I internalized? Or what from my own background? Whether familial factors, cultural factors, religious factors. What is it that makes me feel like this is outside of the realm of possibility for me? And
mm,
what can I do to process and heal that so that I can take it to the next level? So I
mm,
do think sometimes people will help people who are in that place, that they used to be in. I also think sometimes people engage in fixer upper type projects
mm,
because they know what it's like to be broken and not have anyone. So they
mm.
seek to be that for other people. But
Yeah,
I
that's
always, like, I'll
good.
tell my clients and stuff, you can't be their teddy bear. It is not your job to be like their comfort or security
Mm,
blanket. Like, that's not how relationships work. You have
okay.
to have the core foundation of the relationship. And then a byproduct of that is the comfort and so on and so forth. But
Mm,
people cannot use you as their personal blanket where they pull you on when they need comfort, and then once they're good, they put you to the side. That is
mm.
not okay, and that is not healthy.
Be the fishing instructor is what she's saying. Teach them how to fish.
Yes.
Teach him how to fish. We know that reference.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't be the Build-A-Bear or the teddy bear
Yeah,
coming all the time.
no. Build a bear is okay. Build a man, build a woman, you're pushing
Oh. She's like, that's the store, and that's
it.
good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Build a person, not so much.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
Unless you are the Lord.
Yeah, thank you. You hit the nail right on the head. Only the Lord can change people. We are not in the changing people job. And even myself as a therapist, I always remind myself, you cannot change people.
Yeah.
Even as a Christian, I had to remind myself, you are not the Holy Spirit Junior. Because when I was in organizations, I would do whatever I can to try to help people. And my sister was just like, girl, you're doing too much. Like, God has to do that. You can't do that. And it helped me to recognize I was trying to take on a role I was never meant to fill.
That right there, let that simmer.
Mm-hmm.
A role that I was not
Mm-hmm.
meant to fill.
Nope. Jesus died on the cross, so I don't
Have to.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is the end of our show. And I just wanted to thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Every time you come, you always just give us so much knowledge, so much, stuff to just chew on. Let it sink
Thank
in.
you,
So
Lee. Thank you
we're
for
going to let it
having
sink
me.
in.
Yeah.
Yes. And so before we go, I definitely wanted to give you opportunity to mention again about your private practice. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. We should have had one day we're going to get y'all both on here. See y'all cut up live in the flesh because y'all sisters. So I know it's a whole nother
Yeah.
dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely a different dynamic.
But yeah, so just share with our audience how they can follow you, any service that you
Yes.
provide, and just your private practice, everything that you have.
Awesome.
So they
So as
know.
I said earlier, I'm in private practice with my sister, Dr. Joe. We both provide therapy at Augustin and Augustin Psychology. And then we also have the Mental Health Sisters. So you guys should see my information at the top. For IG, it's Dr. Dyona, Drdyona. And then for the Mental Health Sisters, it's TMHS Official. And definitely, you guys can follow our page. My sister and I have a lot of things that we are currently working on behind the scenes. So if you guys are following our pages, then you guys can keep up with what we're doing.
Sounds good. Well, to the audience, thank you guys for just being here and always supporting. And even if you catch the show later, just make sure just to share it. Share it. If you guys enjoyed it, share it to someone who you know can benefit from this conversation. Honestly, I think we all can because there's just stuff that I wasn't even thinking about. And you just, I
Right.
was like, oh, okay. Got to write that down. And a lot of stuff, I'm going to watch it back and just take notes on all the gems that you've dropped. So thank you guys so much for being here. And we will have one more show, and that will be the end of this season of Transforming with V. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you again and have a beautiful night. Good night.